Irishman is Martin Scorsese's new movie that will be shortly released on Netflix, and it stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Ray Romano, Harvey Keitel, and Joe Pesci. It's based off the biography of famous mobster hitman Frank the Irishman Sheeran that was detailed in a 2004 book called I Heard You Paint Houses. I mentioned in my Marriage Story review, another excellent film that is going to be released on Netflix soon, how artists will produce variations on similar themes, and when you look back at the ensemble, at the totality of their work, at their oeuvre, you can really see a sort of coherent reworking of similar ideas and similar themes and similar obsession. And of course, the mobster movie is something that Martin Scorsese has been doing certainly since Goodfellas in 1990, but you could argue that he's been working with these ideas and these kinds of characters and these kinds of settings since all the way back in the 70s with Mean Streets. There are many similarities, of course, between Goodfellas and The Irishman, whether it be the style, the storytelling, the narrative device, the fact that it's based off a true story, the fact that it is funnier than most movies out there marketing themselves as a comedy, but I do feel that The Irishman is also far more solemn and self-reflexive. The film is almost literally about death and about growing old. The way the story is told, it is told from the point of view of Frank Sheeran, who's in an old folks' home, who's reflecting upon the last 50 years of his life and his life as a mobster. It's very easy to see what attracted De Niro and Scorsese, who are now two old men, to this project, as we see this man reflect on his life, his work, his family, and most importantly his friendships, as he comes to terms with the fact that everybody around him has disappeared and he is now about to die. And you really get the sense that the film is very conscious of that sort of imminent death as it reunites a whole generation of actors that we've grown to love and that have really defined an entire era of American cinema. You almost get a sentiment of the band getting back together for one last hurrah, and all the actors here are absolutely breathtaking. We haven't seen Pacino or De Niro in this kind of form in ages.
Making a point dressing like that? Is that you dress for a meeting?
And this is how you dress in Florida? In a suit?
For a meeting? Anywhere. Florida, Timbuktu, I dress in a suit. For a meeting. And you're late.
Joe Pesci, who had all but retired, is in this and absolutely steals the show. He is probably the most outstanding performance within this whole cast of incredible actors. He's incredibly charming and warm, but also very menacing and very serious. He almost plays against type in that in the Scorsese movies, in Goodfellas, in Casino, he's the hothead, he's the violent one, he has these tremendous outbursts. But in this, he's the opposite. He's extremely smart and calculated and calm and level-headed, and it's just an amazing way to sort of send off a tremendous actor that has been good in other stuff, but has really particularly shined within Scorsese cinema, and is just beautiful to see him once more, and really the entire band back together.
I mean, without the beard. No, it's him. Oh, it's him. Holy.
One of the major themes of these mobster movies is generally how integrated the mob and the Italian mafia and indeed organized crime is within just American life in general. And I think The Irishman, more than Goodfellas and more than Casino, really pushes that idea even further of how basically politics, big business, labor unions, and the mafia are like these four giant pillars that have essentially built the United States. And that's a really sobering and kind of depressing thought when you think about how much of American history, at least in the 20th century, is completely intertwined with the history of the mafia. I also want to touch quickly on the de-aging process within the film. Obviously, it's a big part of the movie. Scorsese himself has been talking about it a lot. Originally, he wasn't that satisfied with it, and they went back and they worked on it a lot to get it to where it was satisfactory. In certain instances, it works really, really well, but it still has that little bit of uncanny valley. It's still not perfect yet, which is reassuring in a way that you still can't digitally recreate human faces to perfection. I think especially where it's kind of weird sometimes is when you smooth out the features in the face, you tend to exaggerate or modify muscle movements within the face, and as humans, we are extremely attuned to identifying muscle movements around the eyes, in the face, in the mouth. Obviously, it's an evolutionary advantage to know whether the person that you're talking with, if he wants to harm you, if he is a person that is hiding something from you, if he seems to be happy, if he's angry. And so as soon as that's not absolutely perfect, we tend to understand that something's wrong. And yeah, that digital technology still isn't perfect. It still has that kind of video game mouth kind of feel. And I think the second thing is the character's movement. I mean, when De Niro is supposed to be at his youngest, he's probably in his late 30s, early 40s in this film, and his face has been de-aged, but his body looks and is kind of slouched down, and he moves like a 70-year-old man. There's no way of getting around it. But the fact of the matter is that the movie is so good, it's so entertaining. In a way, it's really, really touching that you barely ever think about it. The Irishman is a tremendous feat. It's one of the best films of the year. And really, it's kind of wonderful how Netflix is providing a home for these filmmakers that aren't being given much opportunities in other studios. I mean, apparently this film was being shopped around for ages. Nobody wanted it. Netflix were the only studio that gave him the green light. Same with Roma. And honestly, there's a lot of terrible stuff on Netflix, and they produce some really terrible original series and movies, but they also produce a lot of gold. I would also salute the fact that they released these movies in theaters. It's playing in 2 theaters in Montreal. And so, yeah, if you want that theatrical experience, it's there. But if you just want to watch the film at home, you can do that as well. And I think that's a really interesting solution going forward. I will say it's 3.5 hours long almost. It's quite possibly the fastest 3.5 hour movie I've ever sat through. I really didn't feel the length at all. However, I am glad to have seen it in a wonderful theater with a wonderful sound system where I could shut off the rest of the world. I do think, for me, there really is still something to it.
I never waited for anyone who was late more than 10 minutes in my life.
I'd say 15. 15's right.
No, 10.
I don't think so. 10's not enough. You have to take traffic into account.
That's what I'm doing. I'm taking traffic into account. That's why it's 10.
I still say 15.
No, 10.
Fine, we disagree on that.
Well, how about 12.5 minutes?
So as always, thanks very much for watching the video. Please be sure to hit the like button if you like the review. Subscribe if you're new, and until next time, see ya.